All right, guys, welcome to another edition of the Tech Confab podcast. I'm your host, Joe Budu, and I will be hosting other experts in the tech industry on trending topics in science, artificial intelligence, innovation, and more. So, if you're on the stream, kindly share the link with your friends. You can tweet about it, you can share it on Facebook. You can share the link on WhatsApp. Let people know that the stream has started so that others can join as well. It's going to be an interactive session today, and as always, so feel free to put in your comments in the comment section, and feel free to ask questions and contribute when you would want to. All right, so we are streaming live on Facebook, also on YouTube, and on Periscope. So if you're on Facebook, just share the live stream so everyone else can see. If you're on YouTube, you can share the link on WhatsApp or anywhere that you'd want to share it. If you are watching on Twitter, you can retweet so all your followers can see as well. It's going to be an interesting one today. So just stay tuned. We'll be starting in a bit. All right. So welcome, William. Welcome, Sledge, to the stream. Yes. So if you are watching live, just let me know. I want to see who's watching the stream today. Just let me know where you're watching from and your name. Just type it in the comments section, and I'll know who's watching me today. All right, we'll be starting just in a minute. Um, Today the topic is going to be on insights on COVID-19. It's the hotspots and its spread, and my guest today is going to be Dr. Kwabena Nuamah. He is an artificial intelligence researcher and also the CEO and co-founder of Cognate Systems, and which is a software development company. So welcome, Mike, to the stream. Um, we'll be starting in a moment. So just stay tuned, and Dr. Kwabena Nuamah will be joining us in a minute. All right, Doctor, welcome to the stream today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Joel. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing great. It's been a pleasure meeting you and finding out about you and the work that you are doing at Cognate Systems and Open World. I actually spoke about you in my very first episode, so my followers would know. I mentioned Open World and the data collection and how it would have helped, or how it's helping, if I should put it that way, with the battle against COVID-19. So yeah, welcome, Doctor, once again. So Dr. Nuamah, like I
Thanks.
said before, is the CEO and co-founder of Cognate Systems, which is in Ghana, and he's currently an artificial intelligence researcher in Edinburgh, University of Edinburgh. So welcome, Doctor.
Thank you again, Joel, and thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So what have you been up to recently? How's life, how's family? What have you been up to recently in these times?
Um, it's I mean, life revolves around the current happenings, and Unfortunately for some of us where we are currently placed in the world, we are on lockdown. So there's only so much you can do in terms of moving around. But it's nice being home with family and getting to work on projects like Opine with my colleagues at Cognate Systems.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, it's quite fascinating. It's a small world. I never knew you were so close. Until I reached out to you, and I also never knew you also into artificial intelligence. So it's just quite fascinating that we do have quite a number of things in common. And in addition to that, I used to work at Farmerline, which is also into data collection and similar work that you're also doing at Open World or Cognate Systems. So it's quite nice to talk to you today.
Yeah, good.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, so we'll start right away. Doctor, can you tell us more about Open World and the health assistant and your approach or the approach that your company is taking in combating the coronavirus? I spoke a little bit about it, but you'd have to tell us the details about Open World.
Okay. So I mean, all that I'll be discussing today would probably be related to work that some of the guys who are working actively on this would be happy for me to share. And especially Kingsley Osei, who is also the co-founder of Cognate Systems,
I see.
and some of our hardworking developers, Patrick and Samuel, who work actively on most of the components of the platform.
Okay.
In a nutshell, Opine is a platform that simply facilitates the collection of data. So as you might be aware, in projects like Farmerline, you are interested in getting data that helps you make informed decisions. And in the world we live in now, everything revolves around data, right? You can only act intelligently when you have sufficient information about what you are doing.
Precisely.
So Opine is one of the projects we started some years back at Cognate Systems that was supposed to allow us, reach that particular goal. How we make it easy for people to collect different types of data from different, in different domains and through different forms of communication. It's evolved over time. When we started it out, it was called Search on Mobile, and that was several years ago, even before Android operating system became, known
Big.
to mankind. And those were the days we're building the platform on Java, J2ME, technology. It
I
wasn't
see.
the easiest of ways of deploying such systems, but we've evolved over time and with the technology, and we have something that's, really helping different groups of people, from people doing market research to the projects that we're having related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So yeah, it's been an exciting sort of journey through the years working on Opine, and yeah, we're happy to see where we are now.
Wonderful. Just curious to know when did this all actually start? With Open World.
So Opine, I would say Opine we launched Opine in its first incarnation sometime in 2014.
I see.
And since then we've evolved it. In fact, it wasn't called Opine then; it was called Rumity, which was a play on the name from what we had before, which was research on mobile. But
Okay.
Opine basically captures the idea that people are you know getting their opinions through our platform, whether it's opinions on products, on services, or in this case on their health. So what we have now is Opine, but it's an evolution of a series of technologies that we've released over the past few years. So yeah, we started in 2013, well, no, mostly 2014 on Opine.
That's great and very impressive. I haven't taken the opportunity to actually play with the system, but looking at the screenshots, it looks very, very, very comprehensive and very detailed. So kudos to that workout. I would love to, try my hands on it. If I get the opportunity, probably after this.
Yeah, feel free to try it out. I mean, you can go in and create an account and start playing around with it. The mobile app
Okay,
is available on the Android App Store. You can download that also. Yeah, feel free to give us feedback after you tried it also.
wonderful. Okay, so can you tell us more about, how your approach is in terms of battling the virus, in terms of, how you're reaching out to people, how people are using the app, how many people have been able to input their data, and how many people have you been able to track so far using Open World?
Yeah, so Open World in itself is a layer on top of the Open platform. So we have the core platform which deals with collecting data. The Open Health Assistant was developed specifically for the COVID-19 uh, project that we undertook. And the idea there was that we're going to use technology that's easily accessible to most people. Although we could have, we could have done this through a mobile app, the traditional Android or iOS apps. We
Yeah.
realized that for the environment in which we wanted to place this, that's in Ghana, we will be cutting off a large chunk of the population who essentially dialing a short code on your phone. And that's something that anybody who has recharged their phone's credit in the past would know how to do. And it reduces a lot of the barriers that exist to using the technology. First of all, you don't need to have a smartphone. A basic mobile phone would work. It doesn't need to have all the bells and whistles that you need for most of the mobile apps that are in place now, GPS, Bluetooth. You don't need any of those. You just have a simple mobile phone, dial a short code, and instantly you access our system. And the short codes that we are using at the moment, star 920 star 222 hash and star
Sorry,
714
can
star.
you take it a little bit slow so people can hear?
Yeah. So for the short codes, we have star 920 star 222 hash. That's the first
Okay,
one. And the second one, we have star 714 star 444 hash.
okay.
So
So is
those are
this
the two.
this on all networks, or
Yes, so far we've been able to get it working on all networks. So it works on all networks. So that I mean, in terms of the architecture that we have, it's basically USSD and it integrates directly into our core Opine platform. So we designed the project, specify all the risk factors that we want to capture, and then simply plug it into the USSD gateways that we have, and that instantly allows us to run this. Now, the benefit is that we can modify and evolve our system or the set of questions that we ask people as time goes on. So we started this, for instance, in mid-March, just before Ghana had its first cases. And at the time, we were only basing it on, the questions we were asking were based on what the WHO had considered as symptoms that one should look out for. But these were symptoms that were evolving over time. So the flexibility of our platform allowed us to add these questions, modify the way we ask the questions, to adapt it better to how the health experts were advising doctors, in particular, to triage such cases.
wonderful, wonderful. I mean, that's great, and it's amazing to see a technology as this that's able to reach the masses. Because I think compared to deploying an Android or iOS application, you'd have to get people to download the app, and even first of all have the the mobile phone, the smartphone to be precise, to be able to conduct that data collection activity. But I think with your approach, you're able to reach hundreds of thousands of people, if I'm not wrong.
So yeah, I mean the mobile apps have their place. Don't get me wrong. So it's like we keep saying, there's no silver bullet, there's no one, no, there's no single solution that would reach out to everybody, especially in a part of the world where there's quite a huge diversity in the demographics itself, from the
Okay.
urban to the rural areas. So technologies that, for instance, in the West, in Europe and the US would work because you have some consistency across the board. For instance, most people have access to smartphones, right? It's not the same in places like Ghana. So you have to be careful in how you deploy, technology to target. I mean, technology that's meant to be used by everybody. So we went
Yes.
for sort of the most basic that does the job that we were hoping to do. But there are applications, for the mobile app that would also reach out to specific individuals, which, if carefully done, would also complement, the bigger effort that's being sought.
That's great. That's great. And when you talk of this, the question one would ask is, what attempts have been made so far to work with government in making this tool available to everybody, because I believe this is a really powerful tool if governments adopts this particular technology. So can you
Yeah.
tell us how has that gone so far?
I mean, we've reached out as much as we can. We've spoken to different, people in the Ghana Health Service, different people placed in different ministries who have some impact or some influence on how such technology should be adopted. But the challenge has always been that because this is all happening in the heat of the moment, all the attention and focus is on things, and protocols that have already been established. And so it's very difficult to introduce new technology when people's minds are not necessarily oriented in that way. So we've not really had the kind of response that we would expect. But I would say that in some ways it's not too unusual, because if you look around the world, only a few countries have been able to adopt technology in a very proactive way. Some countries, and I'm referring to people I've spoken to, experts in AI and data science and the rest, who have projects that, right from the very early stages of the pandemic, you could see these are projects that, if adopted early, could help in influencing the kinds of decision and the way we understand, the spread of the virus. But they also had difficulties getting through to the experts and the politicians and the government in the various countries. So in many ways, I think it's probably one of the learnings that we would take out of this entire pandemic. Our response to it in terms of the adoption of the appropriate technologies, and doing so in a more proactive way, so that it helps us understand better what we are doing. So yes, in a nutshell, we haven't had a response that we would expect, but our goal from the word go was to make sure this was something that was driven by the community. And it's always inspiring when you have people sending you messages and asking, what's the latest on the data that we are collecting. When are we getting the next update? So people are actually involved and interested in what's happening. And so I don't think, I mean, we can't leave everything off, for the governments to do. That's what I would say. But it helps if they're able to push and if they're able to acknowledge the existence of technologies that can help, and in their own way sort of use that to complement the bigger effort that they are trying to achieve.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, guys, if you just joined, I'm talking with Dr. Kwabena Nuamah. He's a CEO and co-founder of Cognate Systems, which developed Open World, which is a tool that's being used to collect data and insights into the hotspots and the spread of COVID-19 in Ghana. So, if you just joined in on Facebook or on YouTube or on Periscope, at this point, I would allow for questions, comments. You can ask any question that you want to ask. Just put it in the comment section below, and we would address your question appropriately.
Let me know if you're okay.
Yes, yeah,
Great.
that's perfect. All right, so we would, yeah, I mean, so that's very interesting, and I think one thing that I'm very keen on learning or knowing about, right, is about the hotspots and insights into the data that's been collected, and also with regard to the spread of the virus.
Mm.
Are we tracking where or how it's being spread, and where the hotspots are specifically? I think that's very key insights to know.
Yes. So what our goal? I mean, when we started this off, the idea was first of all to see if we could get people to use this across the country, right?
Yeah.
And through the very small community that we started off with on Facebook, we were able to, at least at the last time I checked, have at least a data point from every single region within the country. And if you look carefully at the last update I posted on Facebook and the one before that,
Yeah.
we had a good coverage across the country, and that was useful to know because it meant that using such technology makes it accessible to almost everybody across the country. So you have a very nice distribution of use across the country, which was the first step. Now the other thing was to get data, on the various symptoms. We at the moment, I mean, we are not health experts, so we are looking at this purely from a data science perspective. Can we capture the symptoms that align with the WHO's set of risk factors, and how can we use that to do very simple things like predicting where, for instance, a new hotspot will be forming. And I mean, we got a bit of that and a little more in the sense that people use the technology. I mean, people were using this actively. But we also had people following up on it. So when they send symptoms, they want to know if someone is going to follow up on them, which was something we picked up very early. So we had, for instance, a couple of people in the northern regions who submitted data. And then because they saw their progression, a progression of their symptoms,
Yeah.
they called back, to find out if anybody able to, attend to them, given that they can see the progression of their symptoms. So it was good to know that at least people were taking the thing seriously. We've had at least 6,000 instead of maybe 6,000 data points, which we are sure are clean at this point in time. Now, this is purely based on the small community that we are working with. So we haven't really pushed it as far as we can, if I should, put it that way. We should definitely be able to do a lot more, data points. But from the small sets that we have, we were, for instance, able to tell that there were going to be new cases. That was before we had positive cases within the eastern region.
Okay.
We would see at least several days before that based on the kinds of symptoms that people were reporting from there. So you could have things like coughs, fatigue, difficulty breathing. So just based on filtering out, for specific symptoms, you could tell that a lot more people within that part of the country were experiencing symptoms that were, very, very much aligned with what one would expect with the virus. So we're not surprised when, or 2 days later, they were officially,
Recorded
announced
cases
that
in Eastern region, right?
and that was from a very small data set. So even without getting that, several hundreds of thousands of data points, based on specific communities that you look at, you can see, certain patterns. But I would also add that the main objective is not just analyzing the data in real time. That's one of the objectives. If you look at one of the screenshots, or sorry, the illustrations of the project when we started off, the idea is also to be able to understand, the way that the virus was spreading based on the data that was sent, as well as the actual testing and the results that were obtained. So there's still a lot more we'll be doing with the data after the this is all said and done. And I think that's one of the learnings that we want to take out of this when it's done. And we'll be sharing that data with other experts in data science and public health.
Yeah, that's great. What comes to mind when I think of this particular model, or this approach where we are looking at contributions from the community, right? You
Mhm.
see that Oxford University also deployed a similar application. And
Yeah.
what they did was that they used the sample data sets that they got to be able to make predictions as to, the entire, or extrapolate to the entire population to see, or to estimate what percentage of the population, actually or likely to have the virus. And
Mm.
I don't know if you've been able to make some of those insights and deductions to see, because I think the health experts for Ghana mentioned that if no measures are taken, up to 10% of the entire Ghanaian population could get, the virus. So, have you been able to make such insights to see, the progression and some of the numbers that we may be likely to have?
Yeah. So I did see the MIT project that you referred to, and there are a few others also in the UK, for instance, from other universities. Those are models that are built based on the data that's being collected, and then collaborations with public health experts for
Experts.
the respective countries. Yes. So you're looking at data plus the models, and then you're using that to build the predictions. At the moment, we have the data. We are still hoping to get experts from the public health field who would have appropriate models that they could then tailor the data to make such predictions. So we won't be able to make any accurate predictions based on the part of the information that we have at the moment, because that would be, I mean, it wouldn't be accurate enough. That's what I would say. So hopefully, once we have other partners looking at the models that predict the pattern of spread, or models that show the rate of infections for different parts of the population, that would give us that kind of insight. But then data that we will be having would feed such models and be able to provide that prediction that you're asking about.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. Of course, you would need, epidemiologists to also work with and, build accurate models that are able to give an accurate representation of, the real world scenarios. So yes, so I guess you are open to collaborate with anyone who's watching, who is an expert in that field, to be able to build a model around the data that you guys have collected, and probably gain some insight, some very insightful insights into what we are looking at here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's one of the goals of our project. We are trying to get people with different expertise, from epidemiologists, public health experts, doctors, data scientists. Those are we are basically trying to get different perspectives to the pandemic, and that helps inform or understand and interpret the data much better. So from our point of view, we're trying to get that data in real time, but at the same time, sharing it with the appropriate,
Authors.
expertise, or people with different expertise to help interpret and understand it. Yeah.
Wonderful,
On
wonderful.
the
Yes.
basic,
Okay.
yeah, on the basic sort of basic analysis, you can easily see the pattern. So if you go into our tool, for instance, if you look at some of the screenshots I shared, you can pick specific symptoms, and you can see how that spread over time within a particular area. So you can pick a particular point in time, and you can see, for instance, within this region, these symptoms that weren't there a few days ago are suddenly showing up, and that's a very simple indicator that, okay, there is some activity there, and if you investigate that further, you will then know whether these hotspots are actually positive coronavirus cases. But that's what we want, because you'd want to have raw data in very quickly to inform some of the activities that you do. So things like planning and assigning resources for testing and all that. If you have data coming in very quickly, it helps make that decision and make it in an informed way.
Wonderful. Perfect. So we have a few questions so far. So guys, if you're watching, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope. If you have any question, contribution, any comments, feel free to drop them in the comment section wherever you're watching us. Okay, so we have a question here. Okay, your therapist is asking, he's saying, will the data that will be captured using the software be accurate enough to make an informed decision? I think, yes, we've touched on that. Maybe you can give a few extra comments on that and we'll tackle the next question.
Yeah, so I mean that's a good question, and that's something that we've been thinking about. One of the obvious things you'd encounter when you do any kind of crowdsourcing of information is the fact that you would have different kinds of users. You have those who initially start off trying to test to see how it actually works, and then you have those who simply want to prank the system and throw in wrong data items. So you'd have different types of users. Now there are a number of ways in which you can deal with that. The first is a simple follow-up of the various cases that are reported. Makes people take it seriously. So if someone knows that, okay, if I make this submission or if I report these symptoms, somebody would actually look at it and call me back to confirm that, okay, that at least aligns people's behaviors to do the right thing. Now, the other side of it also is using machine learning
to try to detect the outliers.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we already do this with things like spam, non-spam.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you
Spam
track
filter.
the behaviors of, exactly. Yeah. So there are ways in which you can do different or use different techniques to clean up the data. But yeah, that's true. I mean, you wouldn't get 100% perfect
accurate, yeah,
data set. There will be cases in there which obviously would not be accurate. But then the hope is that people will do the right thing, knowing that this is a cause for which we are doing the project.
Nice one. Next question. This is from Front Office or Sledge. He says, great job, Dr. Nuamah. Do you have APIs ready for products like Romity and Opine for other developers to extend the service or use within their own applications? I think that's a very good question.
Yeah, so we have been working on, in fact, we released an earlier version of the Opine API. So that allows you to plug into our system and then extend it for your own use case. We are currently working on another version of it that would improve that kind of integration. So we have things like webhooks, so you can capture activity on specific projects that you have in there. So if someone sends or submits new data, that webhook will capture that submission, and then you can immediately act on the data point. We have other webhooks that would do with other things. Yeah, but that's one of the things we are looking at carefully, how we can improve the developer community around Opine.
Great. So guys, if you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section below and we'll continue the discussion. So let's move a little bit outside of Ghana and look at how other countries are handling this. And we've seen that Google and Apple, the top players in the tech industry, are about to implement an approach which uses a combination of Bluetooth and keys and all that to be able to trace infections. And we also see in Singapore they also used an app with similar technology called Trace Together, which also uses Bluetooth to be able to detect proximity. And then so when one person gets infected, then anybody that came into contact with that infected person will also be informed and then advised to self-isolate and maybe seek medical attention. What do you think of these approaches? And probably you can talk about any other approach that you have heard of, like that other countries are employing in terms of using technology or smartphone applications, whatnot, to track or to do contact tracing for the virus.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, there have been especially in the past week or two, a lot of activity on that front, with most governments realizing that they need to find or they need to use technology to complement existing approaches that they have, especially for things like contact tracing. And the idea and the understanding is that, we all have mobile devices on us, and these are technologies that are readily available for, instances like this where you can use, the very basic Bluetooth communications or handshakes between devices to know which device has had contact or has come in close proximity with another device. And based on that, that data that you have, if someone reports later on that they have the virus, you can go back and look at all the contacts that that particular device had in a certain period of time, and then inform or notify them that you have come into close proximity with someone who has now tested positive for the virus, and so you should, self-isolate and, watch out for symptoms if you experience any of them. Now, that's very basic technology, and it does help in things like contact tracing, especially. Now, the challenge that has arisen, in most parts of the Western world, especially, is on privacy and how, people who own these data items could creep beyond the current specification that they have given.
Yeah.
And do things that one wouldn't expect. Things like privacy and surveillance, are always discussed when you bring up such technologies. But depending on how it's implemented, I mean, it does benefit. We've seen how, countries like China, in Wuhan, had different kinds of apps that was used to monitor how people were responding to their treatments, making sure people who were not given the green flag to leave their homes weren't allowed to leave. I mean, there are extremes to which these have been taken. Not one would not agree necessarily on the privacy front with all of them, but there is a role for technology to play in this fight. I know India also had a similar app released recently, and I think they're also, making it mandatory for all public and private sector workers to have it before they're allowed to work. And the pressure is being put on the employers to ensure that there's 100% adoption in each company.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the UK has started testing its own app in the Isle of Wight. Yeah, we're yet to see the outcomes of that. If they are successful, they would also roll it out across the rest of the UK. So yeah, there's a lot of work that's going on from the government side of things. I know a lot of private companies are also looking at similar efforts. And like you mentioned, Google and Apple are trying to create a more a more cohesive platform that achieves the same thing without, so much intrusion, especially on the privacy side. And so their approach is basically to reduce or to sort of decentralize the way the data is being collected, right? So instead of all the information going to a central location, when you have these Bluetooth handshakes between devices, your phone would store its information. It does so in a sort of, they call it low energy Bluetooth state, basically so that it doesn't run down your battery, but then the handshakes can take place. The data is not immediately pushed into, say, a government server, but then it's kept on your phone. And it's when you report that you're having symptoms that data is pushed onto a relay. Your ID is pushed onto some relay server, and that is communicated to other devices who are also on the platform. And it notifies, I mean, the device will check if it has come into contact with you, and then it will notify you if it feels you probably have an exposure or you're at risk. So yeah, the different technologies, there's a lot of discussion going on, especially in Europe and in Europe, in Asia also, on using these technologies. There's still a lot to learn from what's happening, because most countries are now deploying these technologies, and we're here to see how the different strategies and approaches used would play out.
Nice. I mean, it's scary to think of, all these goodies, coming to solve the coronavirus. Good stuff. But then, what happens after the virus is the question that a lot of us are also asking. They they might have the tendency always to take advantage of the situation, then do some further surveillance even after the virus is long gone. So that's what everybody is afraid of. But I think,
Yeah.
I mean, looking at Google and Apple specification, it looks like it's quite anonymous, as in they are not storing your personal information. And I think with that transparency being there, we can
Mhm.
only hope that we will not have our privacy being overridden because
Yeah.
of some of these things. And I mean, I would worry much more with a government implemented application than than probably Google or Apple.
But some of the government, I know, for instance, the UK government has promised to release its source code for the app that they have implemented. The
Okay.
question will be whether they release it before the software is rolled out or it's done afterwards. But at the end of the day, it becomes a question of trust, right? So
Yeah.
how well do you trust the entity that's providing you with the technology, especially with governments, you know, things could go either way. And that's why some people are actually pushing for some clearer legislation on what can be done with the data, when it is stored, how long it is going to be stored for, and how they get rid of it, especially for those taking the centralized approach. The decentralized one, I mean, it avoids a lot of the privacy loopholes, but at the end of the day, anyone who is serious enough, and wants to fetch the data and de-anonymize it can do so to a large extent. So again, it boils down to how well you can trust these institutions or companies that are providing these technologies. And I think for most of them, they are genuinely looking at providing solutions that work. But it always becomes tricky when they have the data and the question becomes what do you do with the data? Yeah. So yeah, there are concerns, but would watch out to see how they address them.
Great, great, great. So, if you just joined on Facebook or YouTube or Periscope, I am talking with Dr. Kwabena Nuamah. He's the co-founder and CEO of Cognate Systems, and that's a tech company that has developed and deployed an application that is being used to track the symptoms and also to also trace the spread of the COVID-19 virus in Ghana. So, guys, we are about 10 minutes to the end of this. If you have any questions, please drop them in before we end. Let me just check who is online. Yeah, so thanks for joining. I can see Henry. I can see Mark Jordan. Thanks for joining. Labi, Ansakoi, Samuel, Deborah, and Elomain. Elomain says, I've become big. Oh." I think it's the angle of the camera, maybe. But yeah, so Doctor, any final thoughts or extra thoughts that you want to share on the ongoings of, the tech industry with respect to COVID-19 and all that?
What I'd say is, first of all, that I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's up to individuals to support the various efforts that are ongoing. What we seem to be doing now is trying to use all available resources to tackle the pandemic. I mean, it's hard enough getting stuck, at home for long periods. Although you can work from home and all that, people are looking at ways in which this can be put under some control, so life begins to, resume as we had it before. But what we need to do is try to find solutions, and from a tech perspective, we always believe that the data drives a lot of the decisions that we take. And so being able to capture that information and capture it early enough so that we can have, good insights to drive and inform the decisions we take. That's a key. From our perspective on Opine, one of the things that we are looking at, or that we've been looking at, is how not just tracking the symptoms and the spread, but then also, using the same technology to provide some kind of relief for individuals. So one of the projects that we've started recently is trying to create that bridge between people who are vulnerable and, for instance, need food or other social relief items, shelter, and water and the rest, and trying to make them aware of resources that might be, within their communities or close by. And we've started working, closely with agencies that are into these kind of social relief items. So we have what we call a database of different places of interest, such that when people, after filling the details, out on Opine Health, they get asked simple questions such as, do you have need for food, or do you need water or shelter? When they answer yes to these questions, our goal is to search within the community that they are in, and then tell them instantly, by SMS, where they can go and find these items. So if there's a food bank close by, or if there's shelter that's being offered somewhere, we can inform them of the availability of these resources, so that it provides that additional that relief that they also need. Not everybody is impacted directly by the virus, but then also they are impacted by the environment that they would find themselves because of restrictions due to this virus. So there's a lot to do within this space, not different dimensions of the problem. There are those who are having mental health related issues, who, through reporting their symptoms, could be followed up on to understand and help them out in these ways. So we are again looking out to find people who could collaborate, using the data sets that we are collecting, and then provide the additional follow-ups on this to provide that kind of relief also. So yes, there is a lot that we are hoping to do with this. But then, like you said, the virus is impacting different aspects of our lives, and we are hoping that we can do things with technology that we couldn't have dreamt, a few years back. And we're hoping that these would be things that would help bring an end to this crisis.
Great. We have a question, probably going to be our last question for today. And this is from Sledge. He is asking, what are some of the areas you believe Ghana wasn't prepared for when the COVID-19 pandemic began? That's a more general question.
Yes, I would say we weren't. It looks like the problem is the same across different countries, because I've been looking at this for not just Ghana, but then other African countries and European countries also. I think the problem is still the same. Most governments were caught, pants down in many ways, especially with lack of adequate investment in the health, their health services. So everybody seems to be scrambling around for PPEs
and ventilators and what. It's terrible.
You hear government officials telling they're trading these items on the black market, because you need them and you have no option than to go where the items are. So that's one side of it. But I think from what I consider as a clear failing is knowing how to ingest available technology more rapidly into existing protocols that they have.
Okay.
It took a long time before we understood that we could use mobile technologies to collect very basic information such as these symptoms, and that takes very little effort, if I should put it that way. It's a non-intrusive method. In Ghana, we have been using USSD for many things, in banking, paying, mobile monies. We are already aware of these technologies. It's how rapidly we were able to take advantage of them. We put this out there, in a matter of we put it out there before we had our first cases. So I would say that I would expect that a government institution would have been taking notice of what was happening around the world and would have been, basically doing what we were doing, which was to plan ahead and assume, different scenarios. If we should have this happen now, what would be our immediate strategy with technology? And I think that wasn't really forthcoming until several weeks afterwards.
I mean, it's we've all seen, how various countries have been reacting to this, and it's for some it's been great, for others it's been appalling. But I mean, it's great to see the works of Ghanaians and the innovation that's happening locally right here in Ghana. And so I want to say, congratulations to you and your team. You recently got featured on CNN, I think a few days ago, and I guess they did a story on what you guys are doing and the methods you are taking to battle the pandemic. Um, yeah, so kudos to you and your team. Thanks so much for joining us today, Dr. Kwabena. We have a question here. I don't know if we have time to
Yeah, sure.
let's just take it. Should have sent it earlier, guy. All right. So your therapist again is asking, how does using a technology gain superiority over the system of lockdown to help combat COVID-19? And that's
Can
a
you
very
repeat the question again?
so
I didn't
yeah,
get the last.
he's asking, how does using technology gain superiority over the system of lockdown to help combat the virus?
Oh, okay. So I'll say it's not a question of choosing one or the other, right?
Yeah,
The idea is that when you have a situation of a lockdown, it gives you time to reset, or you've reduced the amount of movement, and so you can better assess how things are spreading, right? So
yeah,
people are staying out, and that's the best time then to collect
data,
symptoms data, basically, because then you are getting data that's a bit more static,
static, yes.
and that gives you a good idea of okay the state of affairs basically. So I don't think it's superiority in that terms. Rather, it's meant to complement those kinds of efforts.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, so I think we'll wrap it up for today. This has been the Tech Confab podcast. I've been your host, Joe Budu. And once again, Doctor, thank you so much for joining or being the guest on today's episode. And we'll definitely have more discussions after this. So thanks so much. And also,
Thanks. Thanks. And let me also thank the large number of people on Facebook who have been actively using Opine and encouraging their friends to do so on the Opine Health Assistant. The data is very valuable, and we are really excited to have people participating in community-driven projects like this.
all right. So, Doctor, I'll see you later.
Yes, we would have other things to talk about.
Wonderful. Yes, great.
Thanks again for having me. Thanks.
Good. All right, guys. So thanks so much for joining everyone today. So everyone watching live from Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, your contributions, your comments has been very, very, very welcome and wonderful to see everyone come on the stream today. If you haven't subscribed, on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Just type in Tech Confab and you'll find me on all the social media networks. So if you're on Facebook, watching on Facebook, make sure you follow Tech Confab with Joe Budu. If you are watching on Periscope as well, make sure you follow Tech Confab on Twitter. And I'll catch you guys same time next week. Yeah, I've been your host, Joe Budu, and this has been the Tech Confab podcast. Thanks, everyone.